Introduction. In 1 Corinthians 14, the topic of whether women are to keep silent in the churches and only men are allowed to speak is contentious. I am not here to say whether it is or isn't, but to explore the text. There also isn't any underlying suggestion by the use of a female voice for this text-to-speech video. First of all, these are only my views. I did not attend any seminary, nor am I highly educated. The premise of this context is also as such. 1. The supporting doctrine is right division. 2. The churches of God refer to Israelites who have become the first Christians in the early days after the crucifixion of Christ, ascribing to their gospel which is performance-based. 3. The gospel from the 12 apostles in Christ and its faith is no longer available to anybody, even the Jews. What is available now has no separation between them and the Gentiles, as the prophetic program was put to a pause. I will be using the King James Bible as a guide, and the interlinear Greek to compare. Koine Greek copies of the manuscripts written by the apostles and Paul did not have punctuations. The online version shown here, as with all other printed modern Greek, have them to help the modern-day person reading them. Although the King James Bible is highly trusted as an accurate source, translated from the Textus Receptus, sometimes it may be necessary to refer to Greek. In this instance, I am not averse to referring to interlinear Bibles when things are muddy. Okay, that said, let's discover some issues. At that time when Paul was speaking in the churches, there was a motley crew of Messianic Jews. The little flock, as well as Gentile ex-proselytes who by then had believed in Christ. This was a time when the transition of the gospel program for them was moving on to one for the Gentiles, where the Jews were also included, for there is no difference as described by Paul. In the King James Version, in verse 33, it reads, "For God is not the author of confusion, but of peace, as in all churches of the saints." Verse 34, "Let your women keep silence in the churches, for it is not permitted unto them to speak, but they are commanded to be under obedience, as also saith the law." We can try to rearrange the punctuation as an experiment for some context, as we remember that there were no chapters, nor verse indentations in the original papyrus. I know this does not do justice to the Greek, but let's just experiment. Experiment A. For God is not the author of confusion, but of peace, as in all churches of the saints. Let your women keep silence in the churches, for it is not permitted unto them to speak, but they are commanded to be under obedience, as also saith the law. Experiment B. For God is not the author of confusion but of peace, as in all churches of the saints. Let your women keep silence in the churches, for it is not permitted unto them to speak, but they are commanded to be under obedience, as also saith the law. Referencing the online Textus Receptus. 1433.
Ουγαρ έστιν ακαταστασίας ο Θεός αλληρήνης. Ως εν πάσες τες εκκλησίες των Αγίων.
1434.
Γυναίκες ημών εν τες εκκλησίες ηγάτωσαν ουγάρ επιτέτραπτε αυτές λαλήν αλληποτάσεσθε, καθώς και ο νόμος λέγει.
Literal translation. 33. Not. For he is of disorder, the God but of peace, as in all the churches of the saints. 34. The women in the churches, let them be silent. Not. For it is allowed to them to speak, but to be in submission, as also the law says. We do not know why there is a comma at the end of verse 33 in some Bibles, yet a period in some others. Looking at the Greek verse 34, someone edited the first Greek alphabet, A, in the Greek lowercase, suggesting a continuance from verse 33. Again, there isn't any breaks as suggested by scholars in the original Koine Greek. Perhaps the structure of the Greek language, either Koine or modern, makes more sense grammatically for them, and that is why the use of a period or comma, and a continuance in verse 34 with a lowercase a. It is also interesting that the omega, I, in verse 33, is a conjunction in the Greek uppercase, as opposed to OE, denoting the word as, suggesting it is a start of a sentence. Now, let's go back to the idea that Paul was speaking to a motley crew. There is only one group of people who were under the law. As mentioned in verse 34, as the first Christians, the Jews were still under a performance-based doctrine, and there were restrictions for them. Whether or not they applied to the Gentile converts is at best a guess, noting the societal practices at that time period. In our time, as also after the Acts-Romans transition period, the law doesn't apply until their program comes back in the latter days. Not separating the different Gospels makes it difficult to come to an understanding on the context. I know there are many women preachers and leaders even after that time until now. However, as I stated in the beginning, this is not a video about if one should allow or disallow, but just a study of the text as described above. You'll have to make your own conclusions. And thank you for watching this video.